Richard Morgan, donc dans vos ouvrages, on ressent l'influence de l'univers de Matrix, l'univers de Peter Hamilton, de Battlestar Galactica, et avec une petite touche de polar Cowboy Bebop. Est-ce que vous vous retrouvez dans cette thèse?
What was the last part of the question?
The last part was like, are you okay with that?
With the references.
Yeah, with the references.
Right. Well, I think I'm not sure about the Hamilton element because he's really space opera, and I think there's a little bit of space opera in a couple of the Kovacs books, but it's kind of limited. Mostly, my influences are really through the William Gibson end of cyberpunk. And that comes originally from the polar, from the noir school of writing. But a lot of my influences are direct from noir as well, because I was a big fan of American crime writing, guys like James Ellroy, James Lee Burke, and that kind of thing. Lawrence Block, another, I'm a big fan of his as well. And right back to Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett. So those are influences that are more direct, I think. And I think the polar influence is much stronger than the space opera side of things, I think, really. Matrix, yeah. The first book, Altered Carbon, was written before the Matrix came out. So my influence really was Blade Runner. And then later on when the Matrix came out, it was like, oh man, it's the same, that. And that, when I was writing the second and third, obviously the Matrix is part of the continuity of that kind of, that vision. So I wouldn't say the Matrix was an influence, it's more a sort of the same area as the Matrix. But no, Blade Runner really was, Blade Runner and William Gibson, those were my big influences, that's where it started. But I think space opera I'm not really connected to, really.
Une petite synthèse?
En gros, il a expliqué qu'il se sent beaucoup plus proche du film noir et des polars, parce que quand il était plus jeune, il était assez fan de tout ce qui était roman, détective, crime, tout ça. Mais il explique par après aussi donc de l'univers Matrix. Il dit donc que ces bouquins sont sortis avant Matrix.
Well, sorti non. It was.
You're writing.
It was finished and I'm looking for a publisher.
Donc il a fini d'écrire et donc avant la sortie de Matrix. Puis par après, on ressent, quand les films de Matrix sont sortis, on ressent une. Les gens disaient ça ressemble un peu machin tout ça. Mais il disait que plutôt lui ses œuvres sont pas. Il ne caractériserait pas ses œuvres de space opera.
D'accord. On reste un peu dans l'univers Matrix, carbone modifié, au cinéma. Vous avez des nouvelles?
Yes, I have some news. The original film option, which was with Joel Silver and Warner Brothers, that's finished now, that's lapsed. But I have a new option with a Hollywood screenwriter who has a production company of her own. I can't talk about that at the moment, but it is signed and sealed, so the deal has gone through, and we're waiting now for announcements. So this is a very, very high-profile writer, been involved in some very big projects in the last 2 or 3 years, and she's a big fan of my work. So I'm hoping that we're going to see some movement soon. There is a new option, but we have to wait and see.
So the first part was that
the original option with Warner Brothers and with Joel Silver. This is finished. Now. Yeah. And then the book went out of option for about a year and a half. Now it's back in.
Ok. Donc il disait qu'au début il avait un deal avec Warner Bros. Que ça n'a pas passé, mais il a une nouvelle option avec. The new option is with.
It's with a screenwriter whose name I can't tell you at the moment.
Ok. Avec un screenwriter, scénariste, dont le nom il ne peut pas encore divulguer.
C'est great.
Voilà. Mais il espère que.
Ok, il espère you will recognize the name when it's announced.
Voilà. Donc on reconnaîtra son nom dès que ce sera annoncé.
On vous met des fois dans l'univers cyberpunk. Est-ce que vous êtes amateur du cyberpunk animation japonaise, Ghost in the Shell, Akira? Hermitage.
Not so much, no. I've seen Akira. I never really got into anime. There is some anime I really like, the stuff that comes out of Studio Ghibli. So things like Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, this kind of thing, which obviously is not really an influence on my work. But no, what was a big influence on my work was Japanese mainstream cinema. So the films of Takeshi Kitano and a lot of Japanese cinema. In the 90s, when I was writing Altered Carbon, Japanese cinema was just arriving in the West in a big way, and a lot of that I was influenced by quite strongly. But the anime, not so much. I'm not really a big fan of anime. I don't dislike it, but I never got into it.
Niveau film japonais.
J'aurais bien eu la traduction avant, ça m'aurait aidé. Oui, d'abord, parce que sinon on va retrouver. Donc en gros, il disait que il a vu Akira, so you saw Akira, mais il n'est pas très à fond dans l'animation japonaise. Par contre, il aime beaucoup le cinéma japonais, donc Takeshi Kitano. Et le studio Ghibli, voilà, le studio Ghibli.
The Studio Ghibli, you couldn't really say it's an influence.
Niveau film japonais, vous parliez, effectivement, vous préfériez cela aux animés. Tetsuo, Gunhead?
I saw the second, Tetsuo 2. Yeah. No, not the first one, the second one. I saw that. Yeah, it's a good film.
Crisis 2. Hey. Alors, est-ce que l'écriture d'un jeu vidéo au niveau scénario, c'est plus intéressant qu'un roman, ou quelle est la différence?
It's not more interesting, it's just a different kind of interesting. You have to, if you go from one medium to a different medium, you have to unlearn some habits and you have to learn some new habits. So working not just for Crysis, but working for some other video games that I'm doing as well. It's a very steep learning curve. There's a lot to learn, but it's fine. You as long as you come to the project, you go, okay, this is fresh, this is new. I need to pay attention. I need to listen to the people around me. If you do that, then it's fine. It's not a problem. It was the same when I started writing comics. I'd never done a comic before, but so you pay attention, you listen, and you learn. So yeah, it's very different, but not more. It's not more fun or less fun. It's just a different kind of work, and very enjoyable. A lot more social. Writing is very lonely. You sit in your room and you write. You sit in your room and write. Working for a video game company, you're always in meetings. You're discussing things. It's a much more dynamic medium, so it's kind of fun, exciting.
You're more in contact with everybody that's doing the project.
Yeah, you're dealing with the level designers, with the artists, with everybody who's involved in the game. So you're one part of a team, and that's when you're used to being alone in your room writing a novel. This is very refreshing. It's fun, But then it's nice to go back to the novel afterwards, because too much of that
Donc en gros, il explique que les deux médias sont tout aussi intéressants. La grosse différence entre les deux médias, c'est que, déjà il explique que quand on passe d'un média à un autre, comme par exemple quand on écrit pour un comic ou quand on écrit pour un jeu vidéo, il faut apprendre. À chaque fois on apprend. L'autre grosse différence, c'est que quand on écrit un livre, il dit donc c'est une autre activité, on est souvent tout seul dans sa chambre en train d'écrire, tandis que quand on fait un jeu vidéo, on rencontre plein de gens, on est toujours occupé, c'est très dynamique, on rencontre les autres membres de l'équipe comme les level designers et tout ça. Mais il dit qu'à un moment, c'est bien de retourner à l'écriture parce que trop de ce monde de jeux vidéo, on va dire, ça peut rendre un peu fou, on va dire.
Vous jouez à Crysis 2? Vous avez joué?
I haven't finished yet. They sent me a copy when it was finished, but I've been very busy at the moment, so I'm playing through. I'm more or less finished. I've played about 70%, something like that. Nearly finished. Well, the problem is when I've seen it built, so I know what happens at the end, so I'm not in as much hurry to find out, obviously. Yeah.
Donc il disait qu'il a joué, il est environ à 70% du jeu. Mais pour le moment, comme il n'a pas beaucoup de temps, il n'a pas beaucoup de temps de jouer. Et en même temps, il dit comme il a vu tous les stades de création, qu'il connaît un peu le scénario, il n'y a pas vraiment de surprise.
Ah ouais.
Et donc, on va dire, il n'est pas très pressé à le finir.
Ouais, vous connaissez la fin.
Yeah, exactly.
Vous lisez quoi?
Almost anything. I don't mind. Will read anything. I've got in science fiction. I would say that probably my favourite writers at the moment are Ian MacDonald. He's a Northern Irish writer. And Peter Watts, the Canadian writer. They're both fantastic science fiction writers. In fantasy, I don't read much fantasy. Steph Swainston would be one that I read most recently, I would guess. But then I read a lot outside of genre. I think it's quite important to read everything. So yeah, lots of crime writing, lots of mainstream literature. Big fan of Cormac McCarthy, Pete Dexter. Who else? Thomas Pynchon, Andrea Levy. What else? Almost anything. I don't have any fixed areas that I would read. But I think it's important if you're a writer to read as widely as you can, because that way you have a better chance of producing something fresh. If you're only ever reading in a very narrow genre, then you're going to produce something that's very repetitive, that's very, very derivative.
Donc il explique qu'il n'a pas vraiment de genre très précis. Il a donc cité deux écrivains, un Irlandais, je crois que c'était Ian MacDonald. And the Canadian was Peter Watts, un Canadien. Il lit pas vraiment de la fantaisie, mais en gros il dit qu'il est vraiment de tout, parce que quand on est un écrivain, il faut s'intéresser à de tout. Et donc quand on écrit, quand on lit différentes choses et quand on écrit, on va pas tomber dans la monotonie en fait de l'écriture, et donc on arrive à développer plus.
Pour continuer l'aventure, Richard Morgan, on le retrouve sur un site internet, Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not very technical actually. I have a website, and I usually update the website maybe once a month. But apart from that, Twitter, Facebook, I don't do that. I don't have time. I really, really don't have the time. And now I have a baby on the way. So in the next year or two, I'm really not going to have time.